hello everyone. I think we're going to get started. Welcome to today's New York City DAM Meetup event about product photography in DAM. My name is Alice Merchant, and I'm one of the new co-organizers. We're trying to build on the great work that Henrik and Michael and Chad and everybody has done, and bring some more great and valuable meetups to you. We also want to thank our panelists today and our host for this wonderful space. And Craig Danieloff is going to come up and speak for a minute about Global Edit, and then we'll jump right in. So, thank you and welcome.
Thanks. Really, I just wanted to welcome everyone here to, these are the offices of Industrial Color. So Industrial Color Brands is 4 companies involved in various parts of creative production. And then Global Edit is also a company in the family, which is a software company that has a creative production platform that we'd love to show you all at some other time. But tonight, we're happy to have all of you here and our panelists and guests. Have a nice time and enjoy the evening. Thanks.
Make sure I don't trip. So I think the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves, talk about your titles, your roles, your companies, and give a little background about your different positions. And then we're going to walk through a couple different questions about product photography and DAM. Feel free to ask questions. We'll also have a Q&A at the end, but jump in and welcome again. Here.
Thanks, Alice. I'm Jim Dansevich, Jim Z, if you don't want to go for the whole pronunciation. I'm the Director of Global Studio Services for eBay Enterprise. So eBay Enterprise is a division of eBay that was once GSI Commerce, so it's the biggest web store platform out there. A lot of retailers are on our web platform now, and also mid-market solutions in Magento. So we own Magento as well. So we have 5 studios across the North America region. We have a big facility in King of Prussia, PA, here in New York. In Louisville, Kentucky, we have a distribution center installation, one in Canada, and then a small studio in California. So we have about 70 full-time professionals and a lot of freelancers that we're doing product images, copy, dynamic imaging, product personalization, and product video for across our client group. So I've been with them about 5 years and been a Global Edit client for about 4 years. So.
Hi, I'm Deanna Bedoya. I work at Lafayette 148 New York, which is a women's wear company based in New York. They're sold mostly in Bloomingdale's, Saks, and Neiman Marcus. But there's also a large website, Lafayette148ny.com. I'm Director of Creative Services, so I oversee the department that produces all of the photography assets for the website, as well as catalog, editorial, and social media. I have a team of a digital asset manager, a photo shoot producer, stylist, and a retouching team in-house. So I'm excited to talk about kind of workflow processes and how you get everything done on time.
Hi, I'm Nikki Shewell. I work at J.Crew, a clothing retailer that you might have heard of. My title is Senior Digital Archivist, but we're kind of glorified file traffickers. The team consists of me and Elizabeth Sayal, who's sitting here. And we're positioned between the photo shoots for the web and the catalog, and then the design teams. And we do archive all the assets as well in our asset management system, and deal with a lot of social media shoots as well. We'll get into all of that more.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mitzner. I'm with Swimsuits for All, which is an e-commerce website specializing in women's swimwear sizes 8 and up. We are also owned by Full Beauty Corporation, which owns a couple other websites as well. Title is Content Director. I'm in charge of social media, copywriting, graphic design, strategic marketing, PR, and photo shoot production. Which is a lot of things. But here mostly talk about our workflow and how we deal with a lot of the different kinds of shooting we do for e-commerce, recently catalog, and a lot of different PR and email marketing needs.
Thank you. So I think the first thing we want to talk about has to do with the type of assets that you create. If you want to talk about some challenges with them or just the specifics about what you deal with on a day-to-day basis, that'd be great.
Most of our assets are product images. So pretty simple product photography with multiple shots and angles. And then increasingly has been more editorial work on various file sizes, and more and more video at scale. So for a couple of retailers, we're doing hundreds of product videos every year. So that's actually, presented some challenges for an organization that was once just an image house, and now is dealing with large files in video, HD, and then obviously have toyed with 4K video as well. So that's primarily what we do. We also store and write quite a bit of copy for our clients as well. So that's stored in there as well.
So the bulk of the work that comes out of the creative services department is for e-commerce. I'd say about 80%. We shoot about 150 days a year total for e-com, advertising, lookbook, catalog, and social media. But the bulk of it is e-com, and we have a pretty large collection every season. So our challenge is really just getting all of the SKUs live in time, and we do tend to front load our collection so that everything is up on the site earlier rather than following the floor set delivery. We do use Global Edit to capture the images and manage all of the retouching. I would say we do about 1,500 images a month. We do front, back, and side, which is really what our bandwidth can allow right now as far as resources, but I always feel like it's never enough, and I'd really be interested to know from other people when they shop online, do they want front, side, back, angles? I just feel like when I shop, the more I see, the better. We do two, obviously front and back, and then we do side when there's a detail, and I still feel like it's never enough, but it's tons of SKUs at the end of the month or at the end of the shoot. We do about 50 SKUs a day. That's kind of our standard for e-com. And there's challenges within that as far as styling and ways to wear, depending on the sizing and the samples. And then about 20% of all of our SKUs are then color changed, which is not color corrected. It's actually changing the color, starting from a neutral and changing it to whatever that may be, a green or a red. And that's, again, because the cost of the samples to make them is so high, and we need them much earlier than they are produced in bulk, that that's another challenge we have, which is getting all of the color corrections done accurately. Really, really hard. And managing a kind of a color library so that our retouchers have what they need from the beginning, and it doesn't slow the workflow. We do also, of course, ad campaigns and catalogs, and I would like to bring Global Edit into the catalog routing, because I think there's a big miss in not having everyone's eyes, especially from pre-production and the design team, the way everyone's eyes are on the light box for e-com. So that's great. Matthew just told me that now you can upload multiple PDFs and get them marked up, so that will be happening very soon. And then, of course, there's social media images, which I think everyone probably can speak to, needing more and more of those, and needing them for each channel. Facebook needs one set of stylized images, Instagram another, and we are working on that now. We haven't embarked on it yet, but that's a challenge that's coming down the road really quickly, and it's, those feel like herding stray cats in some ways. It's not as cut and dry as e-commerce. It tends to happen later in the production timeline. Great ideas tend to happen whenever they feel like happening, so you have to accommodate. So that'll be interesting to talk to everybody here about how they're managing to provide all of those assets as well, and what type of workflow they put them in.
We also have both photos and video assets. We shoot about 50 to 80 shoot days a month for shoots that have a model, and then roughly about 25 social media shoots a month, and that's everything from J.Crew, Madewell, and factory shoots. So it's a huge volume, and just trying to process those shoots and get them through is what we generally spend the majority of our time doing, but we do have to also keep we have a series of servers that we're keeping, and we're kind of the tech people also who are troubleshooting and working with our IT teams to, take care of all those sort of issues, get more space when needed, all that kind of thing. And for a company this large, there are also all these other assets that pop up all the time, in little pockets, and we're technically supposed to be watching all of those things, but one of our issues is just having enough staff to cover all of the, actually archive all of the press assets, and every time, one of our CEOs gets mentioned in the news or, gets interviewed somewhere, and so all of these assets are also something we try to keep the cultural assets as well, and those all go into the dam, so all of those sorts of assets and things are an issue for us as well.
So we're mostly dealing with photography. We've just started dealing with video. We're going to be working on doing some more product video, but it's very new for us. So mostly doing product photography for e-commerce, but that for us, being a swimwear company, comes in a lot of different formats, which we shoot our backs, detail shots, alt views, angles in a studio, and then we shoot all of our front imagery as well as editorials, ad campaigns, PR campaigns, things of that nature on location. So one of the issues that we have is that we are constantly not in the country shooting and needing the workflow to start basically the evening after we shoot, so the rest of the team back here in New York can get the SKUs live in time, because we work with very, very short lead times, unfortunately, between when we're getting the samples to when we're shooting, when the SKUs need to be live. And so, timing is definitely a big thing for us, and having a strong enough internet connection in whatever foreign country we're in to upload massive amounts of images. We're basically right now doing, it totally depends on the month. When we're shooting, we'll have 2,500 images. Some months, very few. We're also currently in the process of using Global Edit sort of as a dam and backlogging all of our photography from years past, and having the staff to do so. We really operate very lean, even though we're 10 years old, sort of operate like a startup, and just not having enough time and staff to really get all that stuff organized.
For us, when we do a shoot for catalog, say, a more editorial shoot that they do either in a studio here in the city or on location somewhere in the world, they have maybe 10 to 15 different looks that we shoot a day, and then they'll shoot, any number of, somewhere from 50 to sometimes 300 for each look. So it really depends. If they're on location, they're shooting a lot more because they don't want to miss anything, can't go back, that kind of thing, don't want to have to reproduce it. So it's massive volumes of images, but what we pass on to the retouching and the web and catalog design teams is just the selects from the shoot. So maybe 50 or so images per shoot, and we have probably about 7 or so per catalog, and we do one a month. It's hard to say a number. It's easier to say the number of shoot days that we have a month than it is the number of images.
Yeah, I guess everybody works on different kind of benchmarks. We do 150, we make 150 selects a web shoot. That's 50 SKUs shot 2 to 3 ways. Our catalog shoots are usually 120 looks, and then we want to also get outtakes from them, more emotional shots. So, I guess just to quantify on a day basis, to your point, it's for e-com it's 150, and then for catalog it's 120 plus outtakes. And actually, just to talk about volume and keeping everything, published and everyone aware, one of the challenges we also have is a lot of people want to know, was there no other select for that catalog or an outtake? Or we share our images with, our retailers, and they don't want to share an image, so you have to go back into the bag, and it's contact sheets aren't enough. And, how do you just let everyone know, and when do you start saying no, too, and say, there's too many selects on this shot. They're no longer good anymore, So I think Global Edit has helped us, at least at the very minimum, at the least publish out what was shot and what was captured at a shoot, so that if someone wants to dive deeper into a certain look, they can. I think it just gets overwhelming when you start to really dive deep, but it is interesting, and I'd love to hear what other people do as far as when selects are made. Do you have to go dive back in?
Yeah, we shoot for a lot of different clients. So I forget what our tonnage last year was, but it's 300,000 or 400,000 pushed images, and that's just the stuff that we deliver to our clients. So, on any given day, we might be doing 2,000 or 3,000 individual selects from different sets across all the studio locations. So, I think it's interesting, Nikki's role, because in my past life, one of the things that we saw ultimately important in the real key to this is having an archivist strategy and somebody who's really going to go through and look at it. Because you're going to go and make your selects, right, for the stuff you need for that day. But I know for our business model, we're saving every frame, so we can go back in for selects. We're saving the layered PDFs or PSDs on retouch files. It just becomes massive amounts of stuff to store. Now, we're doing a lot of stuff in obviously the fashion and retail space, so that stuff doesn't have a long shelf life. But we always end up hanging on to it longer than we should, which means we're just burning a lot of spinning disk, So like that role, and the fact that you guys have that is really great, and it's a key role, and it's one of the things that I think people often miss, is that you really kind of need somebody looking at it, and then you need somebody looking at it again going, are we really going to use that, or who's going to use that, and are we really going to save that, which I'm sure is probably a challenge that you guys have on a regular basis, right? And then ultimately, you'll get rid of something, and somebody 2 months from now will say, hey, you remember that one? And we know we don't have it anymore, which is just what you're going to have.
We manage the expiration on a number of servers. Like, there's a different server for each sort of workflow, so they get full, and you have to clear them off. And obviously, the images that we shoot for catalog are more high value. They live for longer. The things we shoot for e-com have a shorter life, but any select that's used in the catalog or anywhere on the website or for social media or for any advertising marketing project gets automatically permanently saved in our DAM. So there's that too.
Point of order, is that DAM global edit or is that DAM in-house?
No, it's Telescope. Yeah.
We're making a lot of selects typically on each style because what we do is we sell the same basically silhouette in multiple prints. It could be up to 30 prints. And for the most part, we're shooting some of them, some that we find that won't look as good if we're basically digitally placing the print on. It has like a lot of ruching or certain piping or seaming that makes it really just not the right way to do it, to digitally place the print. But we are really basically overshooting for each style, knowing that we're going to go back, and that's everything from like making sure that the model's hair is off of her, so it's easiest for us to place the print on the item itself, and then for the actual shot that we'll be using of that print, like having the hair on, so there's different variation, but just the model does get tired after a while. So at a certain point, we can only get so many selects out of each style, but we are shooting, I would say, more than an average, frames for e-commerce because we know, we're going back and we have those styles marked during the shoot.
Sorry, guys.
Great case study for a wireless mic.
Thanks for wrangling it. So actually, a number of interesting things are coming up, but I think it's a good segue to talk about in detail your workflows, how complex they are when you're dealing with different internal companies or global timelines, different channels. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
We were talking about this before. One of our biggest challenges is that every client we work with, since we're working, obviously providing these to clients, has a slightly different workflow. So there's different SLAs, different turnaround times, different sample availability. So that's a challenge, having a system and systems. We work with Global Edit. We work with a workflow system called Workhorse, now DraftHorse, that, we constantly find ourselves sort of customizing it to meet our clients' needs. So that's a challenge. There's very rarely one size fits all for every application. And then, we were talking about this as well. We deal a lot with our e-com partners. So, in an e-commerce type operation, you're dealing in SKU numbers and names at alts, where now the conversations are becoming much more integrated with marketing, who don't necessarily live in that sort of nomenclature. They want to know where all the spring this collection is, or the tank tops or whatever. So more and more we're getting into where we're pushing images into catalog management systems and also renaming them and sending them into either the client's DAM or other file locations for the marketing people to use. So, and then that's the third challenge, which is everybody's trying to get more value for their content. So how can we shoot it once and then reuse it across 3 or 4 different mediums? So we have clients that are, the select process is 5 deep because 5 deep. So, everybody from email to display to catalog to, product image are looking at it and saying, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. So, there's several layered complexities.
Well, I think our workflow is very internal. I mean, we're a vertical company, so we make our own clothing, and then we have everything in-house, including our studio and our retouchers. So in many ways, it's really great because the teams that we rely on are right there, and they're all part of the larger kind of system of the company. Having said that, our workflow is basically, we meet with the merchandising teams to understand the buy for that season, and we want the buy drilled down by style count and SKU count, and we want it separated for catalog and web. Web is always the larger buy, obviously. Everything goes to web, and then we have to understand what's going on into the catalog, and then, of course, the ad campaign. So once we determine what the SKU count is for each season, we would basically originally we would just break it down into 50 SKUs a day, how many days do we need to shoot, and then the sample availability. And we just tweaked it recently because we have to share the sample line with the rest of the company, and then we do get dupes in different colors. So we've been prioritizing the deliveries so that we're using our showroom sample line first and then the dupes later. So it's just kind of like small little tweaks that get made to the calendar in the process that really help alleviate some of the tension that happens when you have to share. But we do like to share. And then once, ideally for us, we'd like to shoot 12 weeks before our go live. I'd be curious to know what other people's preferences are. For us, it's more that our retailers also want the images. They'll use, Nordstrom will do, for example, a drop ship, and they will actually use our PDP images on their site. Their lead times are a lot longer, so by shooting 12 weeks out, I'm allowing time to share the images with them. Otherwise, we miss their window and we miss the business. It doesn't always happen that way, and the first delivery tends to be the tightest one, just because of from market to the first posting, but 8 to 12 weeks tends to be what we usually do. And another thing that I learned over the past year or two working on e-com is I used to worry about bottlenecking photo shoots, like, my digital asset manager and art directors would be in shoots for like weeks on end, and I felt so bad for them. And then I realized that actually no, let's shoot everything we can as soon as we can if we have our hands on it, and we'll figure out the bottleneck in post-production later. So that's something I kind of learned recently that has helped a lot. And it will happen though. The retouchers will get bottlenecked and we'll have to outsource, and then you have to make a judgment on what are you outsourcing versus what you're keeping in-house. We keep all our color corrections and changes in-house, and we outsource, things that are a little bit more basic and straightforward. That's kind of our system for e-commerce, and pushing it live, obviously. Catalog is, I feel like catalog and editorial images feel very different, and whether I want to put them in the same type of workflow or whether they even can is another story, I think. Whenever you have more art direction and more creative direction involved, your timelines get smaller and smaller, the milestones get missed, and so it's almost like you have to have a different type of workflow. So we still do start from a SKU level. We do still start at market, understanding what the needs are, and we schedule the shoots accordingly. But I do hope to get to a place where the catalog, for example, we do 14 catalogs a year at 52 pages each, so it really does need to get to a place where it can be routed through global edit, more eyes can be on it, and it can kind of follow this similar workflows that we have for e-commerce, and we'll see.
We shoot, I'd say, about 2 months out for web and about 4 months out for catalog. And the shoots are pretty much, I mean, roughly the same for my team when it comes to, the workflow. Basically, we're either sending out a hard drive or uploading. We have 2 still studios in-house and 2 on-figure studios in-house, which is nice, but then, anything that's a little bit more editorial happens outside of our office. And we're very specifically archivists. We're checking the file names, making sure everything's consistent. There are some scripts that load everything to the website, and all of that work is done. All the retouching, everything is done in-house. All of the marketing, everything is in our office. So we're just trying to make sure that the files are in good shape for all of the other teams that we're passing them to, and all of the editing generally, at least the first round of editing, always happens on set, so it comes back to us ready to separate and pass through. There is a lot of going back to the shoots, though. Certainly, things get repurposed, or people anywhere in the process don't like some of the selects, so they want to go back to the raws and take a look and choose something else. And we end up doing a little bit of actual processing of the images ourselves, and then doing the same thing, renaming, passing them through, and we drop them initially to our DAM unretouched, and then as they get retouched, those versions will replace the unretouched versions, so the work is saved. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So our workflow is actually pretty similar to Lafayette 148's. But so we have a merchandising turnover with our buying and design team, where they basically turn over all of the product for the season, and that's when we start shooting. We also like to be shooting 12 weeks out. We've yet to shoot 12 weeks out. It's more like 8 to 10, and there's been cases where it's more like 4 to 6. But we also try to shoot our in-studio, our backs, and our alts first, just to sort of get that out of the way, and also, any kind of fit issues or, unforeseen things like that, kind of figure it out at that stage before we actually leave the country to go on location. But then when we're on the shoot, we're uploading the days of shooting that evening, low res, and that'll start being uploaded every evening for whatever we covered that day. We're shooting about 27 to 35 on location, but in studio we'll shoot more like between 65 and 80 shots a day. That's SKUs, and so we're pretty efficient. We like to think we're pretty efficient in that regard. And then after that, we'll go through. We'll add all of the metadata, which has been a huge benefit for Global Edit for us. That we're able to go back then and use a search feature that's either everything that's ever been shot in a certain model or everything of a certain SKU. Certainly, bestsellers will shoot several times. We'll refresh the photography every year or so. Want to go back and look at all of that. So metadata, everything from what the photographer was, the model, the SKU, the silhouette name, all that information is entered as soon as possible. And then we have a selections process, which involves a few different people on our internal team and a different approval process. And we're really doing a lot of moving the images from folder to folder in order to organize, this is the selects, this is the approved selects, things of that nature, and really using color coding and starring and a lot of the great features that Global Edit has to offer in order to keep different people's thoughts. Certain people have certain colors and stars and things like that. And then the photographer will upload the high res of the images, the final images that were selected, and then they'll be retouched. So we don't do any retouching in-house for the most part, so that's all outsourced, and they're sent via Lightbox to probably about 5 different retouchers that we're currently working with, and then they'll re-upload, making sure that they're also uploading the metadata, so we're not losing that metadata when the retouchers have the image, and it always is staying with the image itself. And then we'll basically have that. Then we have a job folder that's in image database, because we currently don't have a separate DAM. We're actually using Global Edit inefficiently, potentially, as a DAM, and have an image database on Global Edit where that's where all the final imagery lives. But for us, I think one of the challenges, working with a lot of freelancers, all of our photographers are freelance, so having different jobs for different photographers, and then all of the outsourced retouchers that we work with. There's 2 places where sometimes tends to be hiccups, but we have a great coordinator, so she really helps keep us organized.
Great. is working. Yes, maybe. Actually, if you want to talk a little bit about how much collaboration happens within the system that you're using versus kind of face-to-face or email, especially with global or multiple clients. If there's some challenges there, or if you find having a DAM system makes that more efficient, or if there's been any changes recently in that.
So for us, we really grew very quickly as a business. So we actually used to, write up all of our notes in email for the retouchers, per image, send that to them, and they'd have to read the notes. So now using the markup feature has been huge for us, and just really a way to very efficiently mark up the thing, send it to the retouchers. They tend to get the notes very quickly using that feature. But I would say internally, and also helps, like a lot of us are on location, or we actually have 2 offices as well. So using Global Edit really helps in that regard. That being said, our buying and design team isn't as tech savvy and used to using the system, so we do meet in person in our office when our CEO is approving or taking a look at any of the images, and then like sort of marking up or making notes live in the meeting as is being discussed with some of the heads of the other departments that take a look at the images at different stages.
Our DAM is sort of more just a repository that is where images get dropped at the end of workflows. It's not a place where it's not really accessed so much outside of the office, although we do have the capacity to send people links to certain, collections that we create there. But most of the editing for us is all done on set, and then more back in house as necessary for different projects. So yeah, it's more, we're actually printing out contact sheets of the selects and kind of taking it back to the people who are on set, or the people that know what tailoring was done, and they make notes physically, and then I hand them directly to the retouchers. So it's more of a kind of hand-done process.
We're lucky that we're able to use Global Edit for the markups for our e-commerce. We have a great pre-production and design team that have a lot of very specific comments that they do put on Global Edit, and they do mark it up, which is great. I think we started Global Edit with e-com, and there's another team that does catalogs. I keep going back to catalog because I feel like we finally got it right with e-com, and how do I apply it back to catalog? Because what happens with our catalog world is our technical copywriter for catalog actually routes printouts of the catalog to like 16 people, gets 16 printouts back, gets the most conflicting direction on all of them, and has to actually call people up and say, well, so-and-so said this, and now you're saying that, and who's right, and who touched it last, and all those things. So obviously Global Edit would solve it with everyone being able to kind of see what everyone else is saying, and see in real time what's being discussed. So I'm excited to use it for that. I think, I definitely want to have meetings when necessary. I think it's really important in creative world too, to make sure that things are being communicated correctly. I think everyone can read into notes differently, but we've been really grateful that we have the Global Edit to go through. People can look at it at their leisure. They can access off the iPad if they're on set, if they're at the office. Fabiola's here. She's my digital asset manager, and she's taken the iPad home over the weekend. I'm like, oh gosh, sorry that you have Global Edit now, but you need it, And sometimes also when you're making selects, and I know she probably feels this way, when you have so many to do, you do sometimes need to do it off hours or just at a time where you can really focus. So it's been a great tool. I don't think we'd be able to have been pushing 1,500 images live a month without it. It would have been just so hairy, And I do really want to get the catalog on it, because maybe you guys have found this too, but e-commerce was always to me like the last stop on the train, where it's usually the shoots that happen last. So the fact that our catalog isn't on Global Edit right now means that Fabiola actually gets all the notes for e-com, and then it's like, oh, I hope the catalog photo editor, got all that too, through printouts. So it would be great to have the catalog on it, and then the notes somehow to live and be referenced, or if you're looking at a PDP image, you can look at a catalog version of it, make sure that those somewhat match up, just bringing things into more alignment. I think on websites when you see the same dress on so many different iterations, whether it's social media or e-com or catalog or ad campaign. Obviously, it's not going to look exactly the same due to the photography, but all those really crucial notes that go into the retouching, you know, do you really want to have to do that 5 times over for each single asset? You know, so I'm looking for a way to kind of channel those notes down. You know, if the creative director said she wants the skirt pocket removed, whatever, even though it has a pocket, like, you know, it's like making sure that message is communicated down so that by the time it gets on e-com, it's all aligned.
I think everybody's kind of touched on it, and really the central point is there's so many people now that need to have their hands in the soup, and you need a way to organize that. It's just tough to have individual conversations and phone calls. A lot of the work we do is remote, so we have our clients that are not on set or in studio. We actually, in many cases, have our retouch staff right there actually on set or next to set, so you can have a really close dialogue about that. And then if we get comments back, you know, they can affect that. But a lot of the team is kind of looped into that as well. A lot of our New York workflow, the clients are involved. You know, there's a lot of back and forth communication. But you know, a collaboration tool or a way to really kind of bring that in is really helpful in that regard. So.
Are there any like major changes that you've seen over the past couple of years in how different departments might use systems, or different channels might be adopting systems, or with photography in general? I know that some of you experienced some growth, and there might have been some growth within your workflows that you might have had to adapt to, or anything else you want to speak about.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear you guys, since you guys sort of do this, and we more do it for clients like you, but one of the things I see, again, back to the other point, is there's so many people looking for content. There's so many more channels for content, and we're producing more content than we ever have, and how do we use it, and how do we know how it's being shot, and ensure it's being shot once. My previous life, I worked for QVC, and at various times we would shoot things 3 and 4 times before it would actually go on the air for different purposes, and it drove me nuts. It's like, how many times are we going to shoot this for various mediums and channels? And I like to think they've gotten better at it, but I'm curious to see what you guys, you know, some of those challenges are, because we feel it. We see like producing it, the rounds of approval sometimes takes longer, as people need to go through and look at it and you know, ensure it's going to work for their purposes.
Anything that's come up recently, actually, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of a company called Looklet. Has anyone heard of them? No? Looklet? I don't know what will happen with it, but it was really interesting to me, and I still don't really have my head wrapped around it, but it was actually shooting. The premise was that you would shoot all of your clothing on mannequins, and then the company would clone it onto models. And the models had like 80 different poses, and the mannequins would mimic them. And it was kind of like for people, I guess, that had a lean, well, I don't know, because at first you would think it'd be for people who have a very lean staff. But actually, I feel like in order to do this, you need to have like a huge volume. And even Marcus and Bergdorf are currently doing it. So if you go on their sites and you look at their PDP images, those models aren't actually wearing those clothes. So for me, that was like, what? And I had a nightmare the next night and the night after. And then I found out you had to shoot like 50,000 images a month to make it worth your while. And I was like, okay, phew. But I just found it interesting because I think people are always looking for kind of ways to shortcut. And I mean, I'm really impressed by 80 SKUs a day. And I always ask myself, like, how do you draw the line sometimes? You know, like I said earlier, when are too many selects, you know? And when is too much color correction and color changes too much, you know? And I always like to ask other people these questions because, you know, obviously I'm not always right. So, you know, it's like things like that. I mean, would anyone have known if they went on Neiman's site that those models aren't actually wearing those clothes? You know, I don't know. I always feel like the way clothing falls on a body is so important. And then my next question was like, well, how are they doing video, you know, with her walking? I mean, I think it's really her, but who knows? So anyway, it just came up, and I'd love to, you know, it's exciting to see where the future of e-com is going. So
We actually tested another company that does something similar.
Really?
And it was all offshore, and it didn't look that great, but it was a way they were really pitching it as a value proposition to you know, entities that didn't want to pay for models. So it was like, you know, you shoot once and you just kind of Photoshop it on. But It was okay.
I feel like it's a little strange just because I feel like consumers' expectations of e-com are only getting larger, not smaller. You know, I remember when you launched a site and you had a front and a back image, you were like, okay, done, next. And now it's video and alts and details and, you know, all these other things. And it should be, you know, especially at Lafayette, our price points are, you know, considerable. And so it's like we want to give her every opportunity to understand, you know, the value in the clothes and the luxury that she's getting. So that method did surprise me, and of course that it was Neiman's and Bergdorf's doing it surprised me, but check it out.
Didn't know that. That's crazy. We don't do anything like that. And we shoot about, when we shoot for web, we shoot about 30 SKUs a day, front, back, side, details, men's. Sometimes they shoot more because, I don't know, it's just easier to, not as many different items to style with it or something. What was the original question? The change that I've seen the most, the biggest change is definitely just social media shoots. I mean, when I started, there was none. There weren't any at all. And now, you know, 25 a month or so, and we're, you know, constantly finding new photographers to go shoot little things in different parts of the world or all over the city. And they FTP these, you know, assets to us. And then one of our biggest challenges really is making sure that we have the assets in the size that we need for all the various projects that are, you know, it's going to get used for. And right now we're just getting the JPEGs back because we're not sending hard drives all over the world for these shoots. And so we get the files back, and then when we need something larger for a different project, we have to go back to the photographer and ask for it again. And, you know, storing all of these new assets we don't even have space locally for it, so that's like a constant challenge for us. But yeah, I mean, the social media shoots have just sort of exploded. And I mean, right before I started, they switched from shooting film to digital, but it's been digital ever since I've been there, so.
I think the biggest change for us has really been volume, just because we've grown so much as a business. So started out, you know, I think when the company started out, they only had like 10 styles, and now we have like 1,100 a season. So certainly volume-wise, and then also just need-wise, again, like e-commerce needing so much more. We actually did some testing when I first started working there, where we were shooting a lot in a studio, much more efficient. You know, the lighting's very consistent. The site looked very clean and organized, and we're able to get a lot more done in a day. But the customer wasn't responding to it nearly as much as they're responding to our location shoots. We actually shoot product photography the way most people shoot catalog or editorial. So basically every shot could be the cover of a catalog, which is great because we have so many assets to use for so many different things. But also, you know, we're dealing with, you know, natural light and weather and wind and elements beyond my control, although not everyone feels that they should be beyond my control. But working to try to figure out a way to control the weather. So, you know, bringing that kind of life, especially for swimwear, trying to, you know, articulate to the customer this feeling of being on vacation and being away, and getting them really excited about buying a swimsuit, since I'm sure most women here, regardless of size, not their favorite thing to shop for. So trying to, you know, have all of that kind of imagery and the volume of that, and just also how to dealing with things that sell out very quickly. So we'll plan to shoot certain items for certain reasons. We're going to have this as the cover of a catalog. We're going to have this item as the homepage, and then it'll sell out. So then a shot that we, you know, totally directed in a certain way, now we're going to try to digitally place a different color or a different print onto a shot, and just, you know, does that work, does that not work, and how to manage that, how to basically manage our business and sell through as we plan our creatives. That's been something that's been happening, which is a great problem to have. We're selling out of items, but something that now we have to deal with on a creative end.
Thank you. So keep me honest. I want to make sure we got through everything that you guys actually want to talk about today. But I think we kind of walked through some of the main questions, and I'd like to take some time to open it up for questions from the attendees. And also, I think some of you guys had some questions that you might have wanted some collaboration on. So we can, if anyone has questions, let me know, and we'll kind of.
A couple of people touched on metadata. Where are you doing it? How much? Is it enough? Are you satisfied with what the metadata is doing for you?
And can I just ask a favor, maybe repeat the question too, so that we can record it, if you don't mind?
Metadata, are we doing enough? And is it working? We record all the style metadata right now for everything except for the selling images on the website. It's, taken down by hand during the shoots, and then we enter it into a proprietary app that we have. We export that to our DAM, so it marries up with the images, and it's definitely utilized for the catalogs. That's how the style information gets in the catalog. It's also how it gets onto the editorial images that are on the website, the shop this look sort of thing. We're currently trying to figure out how to start recording metadata for every single selling image you see on our website, which is a huge undertaking for us, and it's something that we're working with a lot of teams to even figure out how to do. And no, there's no such thing as ever enough. I mean, we're supposed to be recording metadata for a lot of things that we just don't even have time to get to. We kind of only get to it for the business critical things, and have stacks and stacks and stacks of these style documents, and places on servers where these documents are stored, that in the hopes that one day we'll have some help and get to go back and I mean, ideally we want everything everything that's a selling image of any sort, whether it's for catalog or web, in our DAM. Our boss definitely wants there to be metadata attached to every single image. So yeah, that's something that we're working on and just have to figure out how to do more and more of in the future.
We are using metadata on every image that we've shot for the last year, since we started with Global Edit. Before that, we haven't, and we're in a slow process of basically backlogging, and then we'll be adding metadata. We definitely use it for all of the critical things. Could we be using it more? Probably. We're currently not, including fabric content, which I think as actually swimwear in general has more fabric innovations and technology, that'll be something that we want to. We just did a line of eco-friendly swimwear or 100% poly, so eventually that'll be something we want to filter by. So trying to anticipate things, as our business develops and as swimwear develops in general, that we could potentially want to filter by in the future, and just as our business grows. But it's been a huge help. I think something that we're hoping also, we have some really great best-selling images. Some we think we know why, based on testing. Some you just never know what the magic was in that shot, and wanting to figure out a way to mark those up. So we always basically can go back to those images specifically to either use as a reference for future or just so we know what they are. But yeah, I think that we could definitely be using it a little bit more, but we use it a lot, and I think for sure we definitely couldn't function as a business without it. And so like the way we search for images, for email marketing, ads, anything of that nature.
I have a question to your question for metadata. Maybe anybody can answer this, but I often wonder how much of the metadata should be put in, at the shoot or in the beginning, as for the Digitech to load into folders or something, and how much, obviously certain things like a best-selling image will happen later. My technical copywriter is often overwhelmed with trying to, work with the go live dates and all of that. And I wonder if when we build the shot lists, if there's a way to extract all of that information and put it in the shot list, and then have the Digitech put it in. I mean, what is everyone's thoughts on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do. We usually get shot lists from our clients, and then we turn it into barcodes, right? So we have barcode scanners that populates that in, and then populates it with the image. So, I mean, there's never enough. But what I would say is try to look for the source. I think to your point, your technical copywriter, we talked about this earlier, or whoever's putting the information in, or wherever the information is getting put in first, if it's a merch trainee who's filling in POs or setting them up in systems, that information is coming from someplace, and you got to figure out a process that follows it through the system. And data integrity is key. You know, we sort of always come up against that, you know.
To your point, so do you end up usually work with templates, kind of like setting up the template before the shoot and having templates, and with that, do you do the embedding of the metadata or not?
We with almost every client we work, the first thing we'll do is do a discovery session. We'll set up naming conventions. We'll set up all that stuff in advance, and then that, you know, in our workflow system, that gets uploaded, and then we're able to go through and barcode scan. We actually physically put out barcodes or QR codes on the physical products, and we'll use that scan. And then for like like it's not uncommon at a Digitech station to have like Alt 1, Alt 2, and they're just going, they're filling in fields by little barcodes that are like cheat sheets. Anything to avoid having people have to type stuff in. Define what you mean by templates a little bit more, like.
So basically, you have the information, you have the XMP template basically give, for certainly the more general stuff, obviously you can excuse me, but.
Yeah, again, when it comes through, they'll just scan the product they're shooting, and it populates it, and then the system reconciles it and knows what record it is. So it's pretty much automatic for them. So.
Do any of your photographers embed information at the point of shooting it in the files, or is it?
No, our photographers don't, but for the web shoots, everything comes back. The file name has, you know, style number, color code, the debut month, the season, shot number, or whatever. But we're the archives team. We are the ones that pretty much use. We've got a proprietary app that is a template that we use to create the metadata. It's, you know, we enter all the information about the shoot, and then we enter, you know, every item that was pictured in this look, and it's all in one place.
So our photographer or the Digitech on set will do the like basic metadata, you know, location, their name, things of that nature, in addition to the SKU if we have it. But an issue is, one, you're, you know, working with Digitech, maybe it's the first time he's working with us, or just not super familiar with our things, and then there's, you know, room for human error, and then we're stuck basically with that metadata forever potentially, or just it's very labor intensive to go back and fix it. So we've tended to, for if it's, you know, not a super simple thing, to go back and add it a little bit after the shoot. Also, we're up against the timeline. Sometimes we're actually getting samples that have no name or SKU when they arrive, so it just also buys us a little bit of time until like the official PO goes through or whatever it is, and then, you know, we'll add it later on. We want to be adding more up front as we work with the same photography team over and over. We've like had a little bit more, you know, trust in them to be adding more and more as time goes on.
So the question is about post-sales data and if that's brought back into making decisions about.
We definitely, you know, we do a lot of photography testing, so we definitely, with a company called Monetate, so we get a lot of that information. We also have just a lot of post-mortem creative discussions where I get a lot of feedback, which I take with. We don't currently, I really am just taking that information into my own, you know, mind and writing it down, and then making it to make decisions moving forward. We're not currently basically entering that information in any kind of formal capacity, either in Global Edit or in a DAM.
Yes, similarly, there are discussions, you know, high-level discussions between the people that plan the shoots and the people, you know, the marketing teams, but it's not any metadata that gets stamped onto our images in any way.
Same here. We have hindsight meetings where we look at, you know, the performance of you know, catalogs and photo assets. And even those meetings I find fascinating because it is kind of bewildering sometimes what's a bestseller and what's not. And like your favorite image in the book is like a bombed. And then that one that you just happened to slip in was like this bestseller. So it's so hard to even understand why you're attributing, you know, or what you're attributing, you know, the great sale to. I almost feel like it could get a little dangerous. I'm speaking now from the creative side, that it could get a little dangerous when you start doing that. We've always had some discussions on, covers, and is the cover supposed to be a selling image, or is it supposed to get you to open the book? That kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's fascinating, don't get me wrong, but I wonder, it's tricky sometimes to say that layout really worked and do it again, because I think it just depends on so many other things.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, with our clients, we get feedback on that, but we don't generally, for that reason, it's really hard to tell what about the image was actually really driving that. We have 3 usability labs as part of eBay Enterprise that we actually work with our clients on, do eye tracking and a lot of usability testing. So we'll often dive deep into images and video on that and try to really gravitate towards trends on what they really think they want. But that you get some really good rich data, rich feedback that way. But I think it's dangerous just to associate it strictly with sales. I think you want to have that customer feedback, which is why we try to encourage lab testing.
Well, please join me in thanking everybody for speaking today. Thank you very much. And thank you, Global Edit. Feel free to network and ask some questions, or come to me if you have any questions about the meetup specifically. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you all. It's great to hear about your businesses. Yeah.